Thank you, everyone, for coming today for this listening session. I'm on a committee at the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Math. And that committee's task over the next year is to write a report. The name of the committee is Supporting Family Caregivers Working in Science, Engineering, Medicine, and Medicine. And what we want to do over the next year is create a report that can advise not only NASA, who is a actual sponsor of this committee, one of the sponsors, but also to our academic and industry facilities where they can see what the best policies and practices are for caregivers. Rosalind Carter said there's 4 types of people in the world. There's those who are caregivers. There's those who will be caregivers. There's those who need caregiving, and then there are those who will have caregiving. So in our cycle of life, we'll all be part of this. And I've had to use time off for caregiving for when my mom passed away, when she was terminally ill. I at least was able to have a month with her and have time off. And then when I had with my wife triplets, that was a lot of caregiving. So we wanted to have this listening session here at the NESF Forum because unlike, or even more typical than any other meeting, it's not just about science, it's about the human side of science. It allows us to bring our whole selves here because we bring our science, we talk about, other experience that we have as humans, as people. So we wanted to set up a listening session with the people here to hear about your experiences, your positive experience, your negative experience, so that we can add that to the report. Anecdote is a very powerful storytelling. It allows people to connect. It releases a lot of endorphins in the brain. And it's even more powerful than just having a report where it's all numbers. We'll do that, but we're looking for you today to give us your story, and we want to listen. Katie Woolert, who is also part of our committee, which is about 16 people from the different areas, from science, which, as I mentioned, I represent the NASA side of things. There's also engineering. There's caregiving, policymakers, specialties in lawyers with family law. And we have a lot of bases covered. So what we want to do is get notes from you and hear your story so that we can put it into our report, which would come out about the end of next year. So with that, I'll give you Katie, and she'll explain the steps for the session today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie Woolert. I'm a program officer at the National Academies and very pleased to be here today. Thank you to Jeff and Christina for making this possible. As Jeff already said, we are working on this caregiving report, and a big part of our task is to make sure that we are learning from those who need caregiving support in whatever capacity that looks like, whether you're caring for children, for other family members. And so the plan for today, as Jeff said, is to learn a little bit from you. We have some specific questions that we would like to cover, but the first part is that we will divide into small groups where you'll have a chance to talk about those questions. I apologize. Steal my notes here. So in those smaller groups, for those online, your breakout groups, and for here, smaller groups of 4 to 6 people. The questions that we're hoping to discuss are: what resources helped you meet your caregiving needs? Where do you still see gaps where greater support is needed? Did you face challenges finding or accessing resources, and what were they? And what would you most want administrators to know about caregiving needs? We have that organized as well in an online tool called Slido. So this is the tool that we're using, and I can share the link. We also, for those in person, just have Post-it notes if you'd rather actually just use a physical Post-it note rather than using this tool. Basically, this is a tool where you can kind of use it like a board to post things. You can create notes, and then on each of the pages, we have the specific questions that we will be asking. So the first question about resources, 2 of those pages, gaps, 2 of those pages, challenges, and the last one about administrators. So I'm going to share this link in the Zoom chat. And again, for those in person, we can actually just hand out physical Post-its for you to write on, and you don't need to access this unless you would prefer that. And I'm more than happy to share that. So we'll take about the first 20 minutes of our time here or so just to chat amongst yourselves in small groups. Then we'll have some time for everyone to kind of look through the notes, organize each other's Post-its, see if there are themes, and then we'll have some time for a larger group discussion. And we'll collect that information to help inform the committee. So thank you all again. If there are questions, please let me know, and I will share the link to this in the chat. Thank you. I apologize for cutting in. I just want to apologies for cutting in. We're going to slowly transition now out of small group discussion into large group discussion. And to do that, we have in the room, we have poster boards set up. This is a time to take any of the Post-its that you've written and place them. They're organized by each question, and a chance to read what others have said to kind of start our transition into larger group discussion. And for those joining virtually, you can obviously continue your discussions or also take an opportunity to move similar topics next to each other on the Jamboard so that we can start to organize our thoughts. And we'll do that for about 10 minutes. So we'll transition to large group discussion in about a minute. So if there's anything else that you want to place on the boards, please feel free to do so now. Okay, we're going to transition into a larger group discussion, and just want to flag for anyone who is doing the networking lunch that does start at 12:30. We can extend a little here if needed, but if you need to go for that, please do leave for that. But I wanted to open up for any comments that people wanted to make. We thought it might actually make sense to start with the second question, since it seems like question 2 on gaps was one of the ones that got the most, at least Post-it notes, whether that was one of the biggest ones to discuss. There are a few themes I saw on the gaps, in part about just when people know about policies, ensuring that policies are available for everyone, particularly grad students or postdocs who sometimes fall through the cracks because they can be defined in a lot of different ways. But I'm curious if there are anything that people would like to bring to light to talk about. And also, if you're joining virtually, please feel free to add something in the chat and we can bring it up for the full group.
I'll come to you.
So there's one thing that someone in our group brought up, and then there's one thing that's like my personal experience. One was that at the start of the pandemic, a lot of care centers for whether it's elderly or disabled family members or childcare have shut down and they haven't reopened. And so that is a critical gap right now, that there are all of these places that used to exist. And so finding that care is not just financially unattainable, it's just literally not there. Oh, 2-year wait list, apparently. The other thing is that I'm a grad student, I'm a TA, and I had a student drop out of college, not just the class. She dealt with a very severely disabled brother, and she was the primary giver of that brother because her parent or guardian was also disabled. And there are for people who are staff and faculty, once you have a full-time job, some places are better than others, but usually there is some structure and you know that there is some sort of paid leave or medical leave. But a lot of universities and the population of students that are going to be facing this is now higher, considering all of the people with long COVID, people who no longer have, and this population is also disproportionately Black people of color, people of low socioeconomic status who already have enough trouble finishing undergraduate college. And I think a lot of universities are like, we're back to normal, things should be in person or whatever, and are forgetting that there are these students that like they cannot go back to normal. And it's not only that these students aren't being given or shown what resources are available, but the people who are teaching them, the TAs and the faculty, aren't being given the resources on how to handle students like that. So we can be better prepared, both emotionally, like protecting ourselves, but also being able to accommodate and help them get through whatever it is, so they don't feel like the choice has to be made that they can either be a caregiver or have to stop their education. So those were the two things that.
Appreciate that. And I do also want to just acknowledge that the committee's charge is a broad one. So we do want to consider not just faculty, but also students, grad students, undergraduate students, staff. So we do care about all these constituency groups. Appreciate that. Other thoughts on where gaps exist, or on any of the other questions if you'd like to go in a different direction?
Hi there, I'm Elise Rumpf with USGS Astrogeology. And one of the things our group talked about was kind of gaps in funding. So one person said that they had a baby during their postdoc, and the postdoc funding, postdoc rules said they could take 3 months leave, and the leave could be paid or unpaid. But if it was paid, that took 3 months out of their postdoc. So they, that basically gave them 3 months less research. And, that's similar for a lot of soft money positions, where if you take maternity leave or other sort of leave, you have that gap and you can pay yourself from your projects during that gap, but then you lose that part of your funding. And so, yeah, we threw out the idea that, some sort of grant or something to fill in that gap, that you could get, 3 months of funding from NASA to pay for your maternity leave would be amazing. But there might be other options out there too.
I'm Chris Sholin, Georgia Tech. One of the gaps that areas gaps that kind of has a wider range that we talked about quite a lot was going through caregiving for family members in hospice, or going through situations along those lines. We mentioned, as one thing that is really nice, or not really nice, but a benefit that came from COVID was the working remote aspect, is a lot of people were able to work remote and then also care for whichever loved one it is that was in hospice care or in need of additional support. But we were identifying a few spots where, like, when you are working and then also caregiving, you're getting burnt out. So if there were opportunities for relief for people who were both working and caregiving at the same time, whether the company can provide support for hiring a nurse who could come in for some period of the day to provide that relief, so that caregivers can give care to themselves as well. We also talked a bit about grief and various accommodations that universities have. Thankfully, members of our group mentioned that our advisors, our specific bosses, were very great, or very lenient, or very helpful in terms of like helping us in our situations, but overall those policies may not be there very well. Also mentioning that at some academic institutions, the kind of blanket response is, oh, go talk to a therapist, we can provide you with one, or you could find your own, and that'll be the good thing for you. You do you. So we were kind of just talking about a few mainly areas of how that can be better. We also had a handful of comments regarding ways childcare could be more flexible for people that can't have remote jobs, or where it might be like they need childcare every once in a while, but not all the time. And then additionally, wanting recommendations for people who want to have dogs or pets in the workspace, if they can bring them, how can you be flexible with people that are allergic to dogs or fearful of dogs, or how to work on some cases like that. And our group posted a lot of the slides or the sticky notes on Slido. We just thought it'd be easier to work on that one. Thank you.
I was writing them down.
Jeff, we have one over.
Hi, Kennedy White, student at Howard University, and it's building off of that because at least in my position in terms of taking care of people in hospice, I had a precarious situation where I was dealing with it out of state. So I go to school up here, but my family's down in Georgia. So getting support like mentally for myself, situations there, and then also this isn't my experience, but an experience of another student with emotional support animals. There's not a lot of that I've seen, or at least in my university, for access for emotional support animals or some type of care for them in situations that are unique for an undergraduate and a graduate experience. And then on top of that, a lot of the access and support and aid in terms of childcare is usually for people who are already established in their careers. And there's not a lot of support for those who are still in undergraduate or grad school. Support for us there because it's not as common, but it still exists. So that's what I was writing up on.
Thank you for all of these comments. I'm also curious. Oh, did you have a yes?
Well, I can make a comment. It's a little challenge.
I thought you were just.
Oh, okay. Well, I could be loud too. No, I was gonna say in terms of some of the challenges, let me just take a different perspective on this. So we have discussions with HR all the time and management about some of these issues. And what they would say is that they would, some of these benefits that people would like, they would love to be able to provide, but ultimately that means that you have to raise the fees across the board for everybody at the Institute. And there's a limit to how far they can go before we start being less competitive with others in terms of how much we charge on our grants and everything else, right? So there's always this trade-off, or there's a trade you have to make between giving people more benefits and being competitive enough that you can win things allow for new business. And so this is something we're always conscious of. You're trying to push the limit as much as you can to give people benefits, but there is a cost to that. That's the tricky thing.
Certainly, I appreciate that point. That is something that the committee, actually, Jeff is on a sub-working group that's talking a lot about the financial piece.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the cost effects and maybe it can be leveraged by something like Fringe, which kind of makes sense. It should be buried in there and negotiated as part of a fringe rate, which of course, when we write proposals, we don't see the fringe rate as reviewers. We just see the effort. So that's what we're comparing apples to apples and not saying, oh, well, this university has a fringe rate of this, or this one has a different fringe rate.
Well, let's talk after.
Okay. Any other comments? We are seeing some consensus with what we have been looking at in the committee. We are gearing it towards younger professionals, from undergraduates to graduates to postdocs, even the staff in STEM, not just the faculty. One person termed it as, we don't need the glass elevator that gets, just the faculty up. We need everyone to be able to get the support system. And I wasn't too clear at the beginning. The transition was a little quick on me, but in this scope, the caregiving isn't just for children. It's for children's dependents, adults, people who are going through transition of life. So it's caregiving at all forms. So thank you for the input. That is, where we're going with this. We do see that industry and it seems like academia does have a problem conveying a lot of their policies, which are like, isn't this something that would attract you to go to work there or keep you there rather than you having to read through documents that HR should be providing you and training you with? We also, I think your group brought it up, just training the faculty as an advisor. What services can you provide? In order for that person to bring their whole selves there and feel accepted into the group, and even training to the TAs so that they're often the ones who work closest with the students and be able to offer the services, or at least being able to kick it up to the advisor or someone in administration to help out, and not just be, well, you'll figure it out. You're a smart person. You can just go ahead and solve your own problem. No, do you have anything you want to add?
I think the other thing, if there are any comments, we're also particularly interested in any challenges people had, even just learning about resources. That's something that we've heard that sometimes, as Jeff mentioned, it's just hard to figure out what's out there. I know we have some comments up here, but if there's anything anyone would like to share in regards to that. But also if there isn't more to share, I will put up my email address, and please contact if you have anything else that you'd like to share. But also wanted to flag that we brought some past reports from the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine, one of our reports on transforming trajectories for women of color in STEM, and one on promising practices for improving the representation of women in STEM. And so please feel free to take those if you're at all interested. But thank you all so much for this. This is incredibly helpful to us, and we're so appreciative.